This is the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I've lived with this phone for a good 2 to 3 months, and I have some thoughts. But before we get into the video, if you can like, subscribe, and comment, any engagement at all really helps the channel to grow, helps the video to get exposure, and I will be eternally grateful for all the support. But without further ado, let's get into this review. First and foremost, the Google Pixel 9 series receives an extensive redesign throughout the entire line, and the new design is very familiar in a way. I think there's a lot of resemblances, intentional resemblances to the iPhone. You have those rounded edges, you have the squared off design, and just an aesthetic that's very, very familiar. And I think that's intentional because if you're gonna try to attract a devout iPhone crowd, what better way to do it than to make a phone that is very familiar? So over the next few months, what you're going to see is the NBA playoffs are going to kick off and ramp up, and what that means is Google is going to kick that Pixel marketing into high gear, and what you're going to see is a lot of Google Pixel marketing. And if you can make a phone that is very familiar, maybe you can attract some converts and things like that from the iPhone crowd. But overall, I think the design is very nice. It's very premium feeling, and I think it's a welcome change, at least for me. Now, when it comes to the materials for the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, you have a phone that has Gorilla Glass Invictus 2 on the front and the back of the phone. You have recycled aluminum around the rails of the phone. On the back of the phone, instead of that integrated camera bar, you have kind of like an island or a plateau with the cutouts for the sensors and the lenses and all that fun stuff. But in general, it does feel like a premium phone. One thing I did want to note, and it is something that is prevalent amongst Pixel users, is like a creaking noise that comes from the phone. If you pull the phone out of your pocket, why out of my pocket, I don't know, but literally every time I pull the phone out of my pocket, there's a creaking noise that just happens. I'm not really sure why it happens. It sounds like the phone's kind of just gonna bust apart. I looked it up on Reddit just to see if this was a common issue, and unfortunately it is. And for me, it started about 2 weeks into my everyday use of the phone. And it seems like it's not isolated to any specific model. It's actually kind of just an entire Pixel 9 issue. Now, from a build perspective, it's just a little bit concerning because of how much the phone costs. Even with all the subsidies they're offering, I mean, they're offering heavy discounts on the phone, but at about $1,200 for the 256 gigabyte US dollars. When you compare that to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra that costs just about the same amount, you have a much more premium phone, a much more like a well-built phone. So it's just a little bit concerning that this phone costs as much as it does and has some of those build quality issues that I've noticed and has been prevalent all throughout my everyday use of the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. So when it comes to the Pixel OS, Google has done a great job of keeping things as simple as possible, and I think that's intentional. They want to try and lure the iOS crowd over to the Pixel or Android side, and how better to do that than to kind of make the experience familiar. You keep the experience as familiar as possible so that the people who are actually thinking about switching make that switch. And the Pixel OS for the Pixel 9 line has relatively stayed the same. A lot of the things that you enjoy about vanilla Android are there. Some of the nice features like music identification and call screening are all back, obviously, because those are things Google has continued to layer on year after year, update after update. But Gemini itself, with the Google 9 series, they included the subscription of Gemini Advanced with the phone, and that includes like Gemini Live and things like that. The Gemini Live is a cool feature. It isn't something, I think it's more of a parlor trick, more of a gimmick than it is something that is useful. It is something cool where you can actually have a conversation with the AI assistant. So I'm thinking of going to New Orleans, and I need some recommendations for dinner spots.
New Orleans has amazing food, and there's a restaurant for every taste and budget. Are you in the mood for something fancy or more casual?
Maybe a little bit more casual.
All right, how about Cochon? They have amazing Cajun.
But again, it's something you have to intentionally do. I think a good assistant or a good AI is something that you don't necessarily have to press a button or anything like that. It is just available to you, kind of like a Tony Stark type of idea. But again, Gemini Live, Gemini Advanced, all that fun stuff, while it is really cool as a proof of concept, I think we still have a ways to go to make AI easily integrated into our daily lives. This year, they focused in on the Gen AI portion of Gemini. So you actually have Pixel Studio that lets you just generate images. You can kind of like take your existing photos and modify them using Gen AI, or you can kind of modify them in the way of adding things to it, removing things, or actually just changing the entire photo completely, again, using AI. And the other update is screenshots, and the Screenshots app is actually really, really interesting. You take a screenshot of a website, and it actually not only saves that screenshot photo, but it actually saves the URL of that actual screenshot. So it makes it very useful. There's a lot of times that I take screenshots either to remember a recipe or to remember something that I needed to do later on. But what any other phone doesn't necessarily do is actually include the URL and a lot of the crucial information of that photo. So that's really, really interesting, really, really cool that Google threw in there for this particular update. Now, over on the display side, you have the next generation of Google's Super Actua display. It's a very, very bright, very vivid display. They're calling it their brightest display ever. It is an LTPO display that goes from 1 hertz all the way up to 120 hertz. In my experiences, again, it was a nice fluid display. Obviously, that 120 hertz really, really makes the experience very, very good. I would put it in line with an iPhone or any other like very good display manufacturer. So it's something that I did enjoy. One thing I did notice in my time with the phone is under direct sunlight, I noticed that there was like vignetting around the edge of the screen, and it was something that I thought maybe this is a feature, maybe to help you focus in on the middle of the screen, or something to conserve battery, especially when it's detecting so much light. When I looked onto Reddit, I was searching just to kind of find out, is this something that is particularly something that I'm noticing or something specific to me or my device? Turns out that it is a common issue amongst users. It is not a feature, but it is something that a lot of people are noticing, and there isn't any remedy that I know of as of today's recording. It could be something that could be solved or fixed or resolved over the life of the Pixel 9 line. But for my device specifically, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, it is something that I noticed. Now, when I talked about the Google Pixel Fold in my October 2023 Pixel Fold review, I talked about how the G2 processor, the Tensor G2, did a very good job of just running that phone. I never really ran into any issues, with the exception of the battery life and kind of like the battery expectancy. I didn't realize, just from a physics and chemistry perspective, just how limited that battery was going to be. It was like a 5,000 or 4,900 milliamp hour battery, but in my time with that phone, it just struggled to keep up, at least, or make it to the end of the day. With the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, it's coming with a Tensor G4. One thing I did notice is a lot of times this phone seemed to struggle to keep up with just regular tasks. An example of that is kind of using the camera while also using wireless Android Auto. In my car, I noticed a lot of lag and a lot of struggling with the phone, or if I'm screen recording while also connected to wireless Android Auto, the phone just struggled to keep up. There was like dropped frames on the display. It just kind of like had a lot of hiccups. And I know that that's a heavy workload for a lot of devices, but that's not something I noticed in any other device I own. And my car is wireless Android, wireless CarPlay. And again, my Galaxy S24 Ultra never struggled. My iPhone never struggled in there. So the G4, while I think the Pixel 9 series was due for a redesign and an overhaul, the processors didn't get that same overhaul. So I'm hoping with the next Pixel 10s or whatever we get next, that Tensor G5 is going to kind of like be leaps and bounds ahead of what the G4 was. But as of right now, from my experiences specifically, I noticed that the G4 did struggle to keep up with heavier workloads. Now, when it comes to the battery life on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, it comes with a 5,060 milliamp hour battery. And for me, in my time living with the phone, I had no issues whatsoever, even in spite of wireless Android Auto zapping my battery, as I've said for my Pixel 9 or Pixel Fold review and my Galaxy S24 Ultra review. But the Pixel 9 Pro XL was no different. Even in spite of that, I made it to the end of the day with no problem, usually about 20% left on my battery. If I had heavier than normal use, or if I was in a location at work that zapped my battery because it was constantly searching for a signal, I still was able to make it to the end of the day, or at least, having to charge right as I go to bed. But either way, battery life on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL was fantastic. Now, what drew me to the Pixel line originally, and more specifically the Pixel 2 XL, was the camera. At that time, a lot of people considered that camera the best available on the market for a phone. For me, it was a time where I was taking photos of my infant child who's going to be 6 in about a month, but at that time I was taking photos of him as an infant, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you can snap a photo and not have to really worry about editing on the back end or anything like that, or having the confidence to take the photo and know that the photo that it produces is going to be a very, very good photo. Fast forward to the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and it's no different. Now, though, we have multiple cameras with multiple different sensors and things like that. First and foremost, we have a 50 megapixel wide angle camera, we have a 48 megapixel ultra wide, a 48 megapixel telephoto camera, and then on the front we have a 42 megapixel camera. All the photos obviously benefit from the computational photography. Google has actually thrown in some image editors and Pixel Studio editors so that you can actually take your images and do some further edits using Gen AI. But overall, the photos that the Pixel 9 Pro XL produces are fantastic, and it doesn't necessarily matter what focal length you're using. They all come out really, really well, especially after it does its computational photography thing. Now, over on the video side, the Pixel continues to do a very, very good job in capturing video. It was something that Google did focus in on a few years ago to just improve the overall quality of the videos that it produces. They even went so far as to artificially remove noises and things like wind. A couple things that they added in terms of the camera was the Add Me feature, which lets you, if just, for instance, there's only two of you to take photos, rather than asking a stranger to take your photo and having to worry about what if this person walks away with my phone or runs away with my phone. It gives you the ability to take a photo as a group, where you can take a photo of one person, that person can then hold your phone and take a photo of you, and it will kind of just stitch those two images together. And in my experiences, it worked pretty well. You can, if you pixel peep, you can kind of see the differences in the two images or two people on the image, and they don't necessarily perfectly line up, but I think where Google's going, especially in those instances where there is always going to be that group photo where someone does have to take the photo and that person is going to be left out. Now, when it comes to my final thoughts and recommendations, the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL is a very, very good phone. Fantastic cameras, great display, great materials used for the actual phone itself. Some little quirks here and there, but nothing that I would consider a deal breaker. Now, what I would consider a deal breaker is the actual cost. For the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, it's coming in at $1,200 roughly for the one I got, which is 256 gigabytes in the white porcelain colorway. This puts it in line really closely to the Galaxy S24 Ultra, which from a build and quality or materials perspective, I think is a better phone overall. But in terms of my experiences with the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, it was a very good experience. A lot of the little things that it does, like the music identification, the always on display, are all top notch, and it's something that I have always loved about the Pixel series. If you're looking to either upgrade from a Pixel 8 or Pixel 7 or even older, this is a very, very good upgrade in my personal opinion. If you're someone who's coming from the iOS world, this is a great transition device just because it is so comparable to the iOS devices. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting this phone for full price. If you have a trade-in device like a Pixel 8 or one of the older Galaxy phones, I would definitely look into trading it in and maximizing the value of those trades. I was able to get my Pixel 9 Pro XL with the Gemini Advance for about a year, $240 value according to Google. But I was able to get $700 for my trade-in and then like $300 Google Store credit. So it brought my total cost down to about $400 or something like that, which was a more palatable cost than, say, for instance, spending $1,200. But if there's anything I missed or anything you would like to know about the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, please leave a comment. If you liked this video, like it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. But if you really, really liked it, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and you have a great day. Yeah.